Hey everyone, in this video we will learn about Amazon API Gateway. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that makes it easy for developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs at any scale. APIs act as the front door for applications to access data, business logic, or functionality from back-end services. Using API Gateway, you can create RESTful APIs and WebSocket APIs that enable real-time two-way communication applications. API Gateway supports containerized and serverless workloads, as well as web applications. API Gateway handles all the tasks involved in accepting and processing up to hundreds of thousands of concurrent API calls. It includes traffic management, core support authorizations and access control, throttling, monitoring, and API versions management. API Gateway has no minimum fees or startup cost. You pay for the API calls you receive and the amount of data transferred out, and with the API Gateway tiered pricing model, you can reduce your costs as your API usage scales. Build RESTful APIs optimized for serviceless workloads and HTTP backends using HTTP APIs. HTTP APIs are the best choice for building APIs that only require API proxy functionality. If your APIs required API proxy functionality and API management features in a single solution, API Gateway also offers REST APIs. You can build real-time two-way communication applications such as chat apps and streaming dashboard with WebSocket APIs. API Gateway maintains a persistent connection to message transfer between your back-end service and your clients. Run multiple versions of the same API simultaneously with API Gateway, allowing you to quickly iterate, test, and release new versions. You pay for calls made to your APIs and data transfers out, and there are no minimum fees or upfront commitments. Provide end users with the lowest possibility latency for API requests and responses by taking advantage of our global network of edge locations using Amazon CloudFront. Throttle traffic and authorize API calls to ensure that back-end operations withstand traffic spikes and back-end systems are not unnecessarily called. API Gateway provides a tiered pricing model for API requests, with an API request price as low as 90 cents per million requests. As the higher tier, you can decrease your cost as your API usage increases per region across your AWS account. Monitor performance metric and information on API calls, data latency and error rates from the API Gateway dashboard, which allows you to visually monitor calls to your services using Amazon. Authorize access to your APIs with AWS Identity and Access Management or IAM and Amazon Cognito. If you use Auth tokens, API Gateway offers native OIDC and Auth 2 support. To support custom authorization requirements, you can execute a Lambda authorize from AWS Lambda. Create RESTful APIs using HTTP APIs or REST APIs. HTTP APIs are the best way to build APIs for a majority of use cases. They're up to 71% cheaper than REST APIs. If your use case requires API proxy functionality and management features in a single solution, you can use REST APIs. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that enables developers to create, publish, and manage APIs for back-end services. It supports building RESTful APIs for wireless car applications, allowing seamless communication between car systems and cloud services. With API Gateway, developers can easily monitor, secure, and scale their wireless car integrations. Odyssey Interactive is a gaming company that leverages Amazon API Gateway to manage back-end services. Through the API Gateway, it enables seamless integrations and communication between various components of their platforms. This helps optimize the performance and scalability of their gaming applications. The Betterfly website for Amazon API Gateway focuses on providing easy-to-use tools for building and managing APIs. It simplifies API creation with robust security, monitoring, and scaling capabilities. With seamless integrations, it allows developers to quickly deploy and manage APIs for various services. Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that allows developers to create, publish, maintain, monitor, and secure APIs at any scale. It handles traffic management, authorizations, and access control for APIs. The service supports RESTful APIs, WebSocket APIs, and HTTP APIs for building applications with seamless integrations into AWS services. To get started with Amazon API Gateway, first create an AWS account if you don't have one and log in to the AWS Management Console. Then navigate to the API Gateway service and click on Create API, where you can choose the type of API you want to build, such as REST, HTTPS, or WebSocket. After creating your API, define resources and add methods, e.g. get, POS to these resources, integrating them with services like AWS Lambda or external HTTPS endpoints. Once your API is ready, create a deployment stage such as dev or prod and deploy your API, making it accessible via a public URL. Lastly, you can secure the API using IAM roles, Lambda authorizers, or Amazon Cognito and monitor performance using AWS CloudWatch. This setup will give you a fully functional API hosted on Amazon API Gateway. Amazon API Gateway provides a fully managed service for building and managing APIs, handling the complexities of traffic management, authorizations, and access control. It supports multiple API types, including RESTful APIs, HTTP APIs, and WebSocket APIs, allowing flexibility in building various application architectures. API Gateway seamlessly integrates with other AWS services such as AWS Lambda, allowing easy backend integrations. It also includes features like built-in monitoring via AWS CloudWatch, custom domain names, versioning, throttling, and rate limiting to ensure optimal performance. Additionally, API Gateway provides strong security options through AWS IAM, Lambda authorizers, and Amazon Cognito, ensuring robust protection for your APIs. Amazon API Gateway is a powerful choice for building and managing APIs due to its scalability, security, and integrations with other AWS services. It allows developers to focus on building their applications rather than managing infrastructure. With features like automatic traffic handling, built-in security, IAM roles, Cognito, Lambda authorizers, and support for RESTful HTTPS and WebSocket APIs. Additionally, it offers easy deployment with custom domain names, versioning, and granular access control, making it ideal for both small applications and enterprise-scale solutions. With API Gateway, you can create RESTful APIs using either HTTP APIs or REST APIs. HTTP APIs are the best way to build APIs that do not require API management features. HTTP APIs are optimized for serverless workloads, and HTTP backends they offer up to 71% cost saving and 60% latency reduction compared to REST APIs from API Gateway. For workloads that require API proxy functionality and API management features in a single solution, such as usage plans and API keys, API Gateway offers REST APIs. To see a side-by-side comparison of supported features for HTTP APIs and REST APIs, visit the documentations. To build real-time two-way communication applications such as chat apps and streaming dashboard, use WebSocket APIs. With API Gateway, you can route requests to private resources in your VPC. Using HTTP APIs, you can build APIs for services behind private ALPs, private NLPs, and IP-based services registered in AWS Cloud Map, such as ECS tasks. API Gateway helps you manage traffic to your backend systems by allowing you to set throttling rules based on the number of requests per second for each HTTP method in your APIs. API Gateway handles any level of traffic received by an API, so you are free to focus on your business logic and services rather than maintaining infrastructure. If you're using REST APIs, you can also set up a cage with customizable keys and time to live in second for your API data to avoid hitting your backend services for each request. With API Gateway, you can quickly and easily create a custom API to your code running in AWS Lambda and then call the Lambda code for your API. API Gateway can execute AWS Lambda code in your account, start AWS step functions, state machines, or make calls to AWS Elastic Beanstalk or web services outside of AWS with public accessible HTTP endpoints. Using the API Gateway console, you can define your REST API and its associated resources and method, manage your API lifecycle, generate your link SDKs, and view API metrics. After an API is deployed and in use, API Gateway provides you with a dashboard to visually monitor calls to the services. The API Gateway console is integrated with Amazon CloudWatch, so you get back-end performance metrics such as API calls, latency, and error rates. Because API Gateway uses CloudWatch to record monitoring information, you can set up custom alarms on API Gateway APIs. API Gateway can also log API execution errors to CloudWatch logs to make debugging easier. To authorize and verify API requests to AWS services, API Gateway can help you leverage Signature version 4 for REST APIs and WebSocket APIs. Using signature versions for authentications, you can use AWS Identity and Access Management IAM and access policies to authorize access to your APIs and all your other AWS resources. You can also use AWS Lambda functions to verify and authorize bearer tokens such as GWT tokens or SAML assertion. If you're using REST APIs, API Gateway helps you manage the ecosystem of third-party developers access your APIs. You can create API keys on API Gateway, set fine-grained access permissions on each API key, and distribute them to third-party developers to access your APIs. You can also define plans that set throttling and request quota limits for each individual API key. The use of API keys is completely optional and must be enabled on a per-method level. If you're using REST APIs, API Gateway can generate clients SDKs for a number of platforms, which you can use to quickly test new APIs from your applications and distribute SDKs to third-party developers. The generate SDKs handle API keys and sign requests using AWS credentials. API Gateway can generate client SDKs for Java, JavaScript, Java for Android, Objective-C, or Swift for iOS and Ruby. You can use AWS CLI to generate and download an SDK of an API for a supported platform by calling the get SDK command. API Gateway also helps you manage multiple release stages for each API version, such as alpha, beta, and productions. Each API stages can be configured to interact with different backend endpoints based on your API setup. Specific stages and versions of an API can be associated with a custom domain name and managed through API Gateway. Stage and versions management allow you to easily test new API versions that enhance or add new functionality to earlier API releases and ensures backward compatibility as users' communities transition to adopt the latest release. With Amazon API Gateway, you only pay when your APIs are in use. There are no minimum fees or upfront commitments. For HTTP APIs and REST APIs, you pay only for the API's calls you receive and the amount of data transferred out. There's no data transfer out charges for private APIs. However, AWS private link charges apply when using private APIs in API Gateway. API Gateway also provides optional data caching charged at an hourly rate that varies based on the cache size you select. For WebSocket APIs, you only pay when your APIs are in use based on number of messages sent and received and connection minutes. The API Gateway free tier includes 1 million HTTP API calls, 1 million REST API calls, 1 million messages, and 750,000 connection minutes per month for up to 12 months. The Amazon API Gateway free tier includes 1 million API calls received for REST APIs, 1 million API calls received for HTTP APIs, and 1 million messages and 750,000 connection minutes for WebSocket APIs per month for up to 12 months. Overall, Amazon API Gateway is a fully managed service that enables developers to create, publish, maintain, and secure APIs at any scale with seamless integrations into AWS services. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see more content like this.